Hey y'all, I wanted to talk to you all about the reason we do high res and what I mean by high res and the purpose of it. So right now, this is a box, and I'm going to talk about Turbo Smooth, and it's a simple box, but see how this edge right here, and if we look at it there's the edge, is infinite, meaning that no matter how close I get to it, it's infinitely sharp. It's always that sharp. Reality does not let us have things that sharp. Even knives have an edge to them. And when we make these mathematical equations for a box, we end up making them impossibly perfect. These edges are, this would be like cut you by just touching it. It doesn't catch a reflection visually is the biggest thing or highlight. So I'm going to show you what the material's like on here. You can see the materials on here, and it's got a pretty good gloss on it. I'll push it up even more. But even so, it's got a good gloss on it. It's got it pretty strong, and still we see nothing. It looks like a flat object. Well, that's why we put high-res stuff on it. And the way we do that, in this case, is we use Turbo Smooth. So I'm going to show you what this does when I click it. And by the way, that's in this drop down here. But when I click it, it's going to make everything turn into a into a ball, basically. But now we see our highlight. Let me explain real quick while I'm loading this up what we're seeing. So when we see Turbo Smooth, what Turbo Smooth does is it takes a vertice, and these are off a little bit because I have my screen at a lower resolution. That's fun. I have to use the mouse. It takes a vertice and a vertice and a vertice. Okay, so we've got three vertices, and what it does, it splits it. So it's going to cut it in half here, cut it in half here. It's going to cut it in half here, in every way. So every edge gets cut in half by one. So if I had a box, it would be cut into quads. Okay. So what that is doing, though, also is it's trying to find the smoothest transition between 2 to 3 points. 3 points generally. So if normally, let me change the color here. Normally, what happens is the polygons, I'm going to put this there, are straight from this point to this point to this point. Again, really, I guess back to this point and that point. Now, this is the interior edge, so nothing. I'm going to turn those two off. But what it's going to do now with the Turbo Smooth, where it cuts in half, is it's going to take it from here and calculate from here to here is not the first point. This one to this one. So it's going to try and find the smoothest transition, so it's going to be kind of smoothing. I'm going to try and do it with my pen, even though it's off. Smoothing as it goes down. So it's averaging this point right here and figuring out where it goes. Okay? That's what Turbo Smooth does. So if we look at our box here, we turn off Turbo Smooth, it's got no place else to do but collapse in on itself. So we do, in most cases, do what's called a support edges. We make support edges. So if I turn this back on and I go to here, you'll see that it turns back to the box. But if I turn this on so I can see final, and it, how do I cut those edges? Well, if I turn on in edge mode, you'll now see the box. Let me hide everything but what's unselected so we can see it a little bit better. But that's the original box showing me the final version and the original box. So as I do these things called support edges, it will allow me to give it less of a turn. So watch. If I do this, if I say control, if I turn on Swift Loop, and what Swift Loop does is it cuts across the loops, which we just talked about. So I click on that. All of a sudden now, if you look at this, it's kind of cool. Oops. Huh. Hello. There we go. If I look at this now, it's kind of cool. Let me turn off this edge here. It's got this part more sharp, but then other parts not quite. So what I'm looking at here is this division has made these edges, these fall offs, a lot sharper because it doesn't have. But if we went and zoomed in on it and it had more polys, you'll see that it has more to it. So what I'm going to do on this one is another Swift loop. Let me grab this one. I'm going to do it this way, like that. And as soon as I do that, now we even have more sharp edges here to work with. If I do this one here, let me turn these off. If I turn this one here, now I've got it sharper. If I do this one here, and then I need one more right there. Okay. So if we look at this edge, now it's still bending it just like we talked about. It's still dividing it, but it's not dividing it as sharply anymore, or it's starting sharper, so it's got more divisions to divide. So then if we take a look at this without it, now we get that sharp, that reflective edge. See how it kind of goes across the object? Well, the other thing that it does is just like any other curve, it also has issues with the straight fall off. So if I take this and I put another cut, let's say in the middle, now it's got 3 points again to go to. If I go to the middle of this one, and I go to the middle of this one, or abouts, I think that's it. Now I've got that a little bit better, but even if I want, I could even come in here and do another support edge, and now I've got a really sharp edge in here. I've got a really sharp edge that doesn't pull off anymore, so it really needs to have, oh, I missed that one apparently before. So now if I turn off these high res, see, now I've got this really nice edge. And granted, it's not going to be perfect at this point. We probably need to do all the edges. But that's the general idea of up-resing something, is to get us to have those edges look more realistic, more in the world that we live in, not in the computers. So if I keep coming here, I'll have that better. And I can just look at this. I don't even have to see the Y. I can see that this one needs one here if I'm going to try and get rid of that curve. And I'm going to try and get rid of that curve. Okay, so let me go back to Photoshop again and explain that curve again. So if I have, let's say, 1, 2, let's do 3 dots, 1, 2, 3 now. And I cut it here, 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 and here. It's going from here to here. We know it kind of does this, right? No, that's squiggly. Let's see if we can do it here. Sorry, my pen is not set to 1080 1920. It's set to 1920 1200, so my cursor is a little bit off from my pen. But then it's going to try and find the smoothest points from these 3, and now this one's kind of going to be tilted, so it's going to go up a little bit and then finally back down. So that's why we're getting those weird bumps. So if we cut it again, we get the same thing. We get that less of a resolute problem there. Anyway, in a short, that's why we up-res. That's how we up-res in a lot of cases. This isn't the only way, but this is the turbo smooth up-res way. And that's all I got. I'll talk to you guys later.